Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Fired up to welcome Benny's Car Wash onto AFR as our new sponsor of our segment with Mike Triplett from neworleans.football. How are you, dude?
Doing good. Last time I talked to you, it was 11:15 in a London hotel room. Feels like it might have been about 48 hours ago.
So I was actually going to ask, you should, it feels like, be reacclimated to the Central Time Zone. Are you?
Yes and no. It's funny. I've had the same conversation with every other media member, and even Cam Jordan said the same thing. The players have said the same thing. We're all screwed up. We're all waking up at like 4:35, 5:30 in the morning, falling asleep at 9 or 10. So we haven't shaken the London out of us quite yet. But it'll be interesting to see if the Saints can do it, because that's no small thing. I mean, it opens themselves up for questioning if they are sluggish at all this week, because they chose not to have the bye after the London game, not wanting to have it so earlier this season. Now, of course, when they made that decision, they did not know, one, that they would be a 1-3 team, and two, that they would have the injuries that they have. I wonder if they could do that over again if they would. But a home game against Seattle, if they're able to win a game that they're favored to win in, that'll help shake a lot off.
But so, Mike, I look at it and go, the Vikings did it. I mean, the Vikings went to London late. They left on Thursday, and they didn't seem any worse for the wear. So why shouldn't the Saints, in turn, be able to do it coming back?
Well, no, I mean, I agree with what the Saints did going for the entire week. It's been good for them. There's obviously both schools of thought. And, last week I did talk to a couple players and coaches who've done it both ways because they've been with other organizations. And it's really hard. I mean, everybody agreed the third day in London, you're still, the first day you just sleep the whole day, you're just starting to feel like yourself on the third day. And a lot of people were, going through Wednesday's practice saying, if we were playing a game right now, that'd be tough. That, like I said, that should be like almost like the same equivalent of home field advantage, giving you like a 3-point advantage on the home spread. It doesn't guarantee anything. You can still play the worst game. The Saints being acclimated to the time zone and the Vikings being less acclimated to the time zone, the team with the 2 turnovers and the 10 penalties is still going to lose every time.
Yes, the 2 turnovers, the 10 penalties were certainly an awful part of it. So that's been the recurring theme so far through 4 games, Mike. They're dead last in turnovers. They're dead last in penalties. So I know that's been a talking point this week, but how do they get that fixed, or can they?
Well, they're taking it very seriously. I'm not saying they're not. My opinion is, first of all, the law of averages will kick in at some point. Fumbles are not necessarily indicative of the type of team you have, and they've been all over the map. I mean, yes, Mark Ingram has 2 of them. For the first time in his career, he has 2 lost fumbles. Yes, Alvin Kamara has 1 of them. You can count on one hand how many times he's lost a fumble. Chris Olave had 1 of them, when he was falling down. One was Andy Dalton. I think that is something that, they could go the next 4 weeks and lose 0 fumbles, and you would hope that would kick in. The penalties, the false starts, that's something that is more indicative of, they got to clean up this offense. They got to make sure that they're on the same page. They've had some alignment issues. They've had some offensive line protection issues. They've got to continue to clean that stuff up too. But it's not completely like the players that have been around for years have forgotten how to play football. So I have to think some of that stuff can be cleaned up. And the most promising part of it is we've seen the glimpses when they're not destroying themselves, where they look pretty decent. I mean, and I think this is why so many people were so upset that Latavius Murray got snatched right up. The way the offense was looking in the third quarter of that game, they were like, oh, this is a clean offensive performance from the Saints, where they're actually in 1st and 10, and then they're in 2nd and 4, and then they get a first down. and they can run, and they can throw, and it's like this is what it's supposed to look like. We forgot what a clean offensive performance looks like. I think they have the talent to be able to do that, especially if Alvin Kamara's back this week.
Is Alvin Kamara going to be back this week?
I think so. I mean, we saw him on the practice field every day last week. When I saw him on Friday, we were all kind of talking amongst ourselves. I was like, boy, he's not doing much. You think there's a chance he won't play this week? But everything I've seen so far this week makes me think he's playing. And he talked yesterday very confidently as though he feels really good and expects to play a big role. And that'll obviously be huge for this team. And I think Andy Dalton will be a good quarterback for him. Andy Dalton, we've always talked about Jameis Winston and throwing to running backs is not a natural part of his game. I think it'll be a big part of Andy Dalton's game. So, yeah, they could certainly use a game where they rely on him being the best playmaker on the field. They haven't really had that all season yet.
He's on Twitter at Mike Triplett, neworleans.football. Our conversations with Mike are brought to you by Benny's Car Wash, bennyscarwash.com. Check out the unlimited membership club starting as low as $14.99 a month. Okay, Andy Dalton is, I would presume, going to be the guy this week again, yes?
They haven't announced that, but yeah, I mean, he's the only quarterback who's practiced all week. Maybe they're allowing for Jameis Winston to get on the practice field tomorrow and see how he feels, but I highly doubt it. I think we will see Dalton only in practice tomorrow and then get some form of announcement that Winston is either doubtful or out as early as tomorrow.
What were there noticeable differences in the offense to you with Dalton as opposed to Jameis?
Yeah, without question. I mean, it was everything we wanted to see from this offense, and I'm not saying Jameis Winston's incapable of doing it, but it was getting the balls out quicker. It was getting the balls, recognizing shorter passes, being willing to have 2 12-play touchdown drives, a 9-play touchdown drive. I don't think, the sample size is too small to say, oh, Dalton means 12-play touchdown drives and Jameis means you can't have those. We saw Jameis be able to do that last year. But I think part of the reason why Jameis was able to do that last year is because he was very effective running the football last year and keeping drives alive on third down by scrambling. And that was completely eliminated from Winston's game this year. But yeah, I mean, especially when they have Alvin Kamara back and Michael Thomas back eventually. I don't think Michael Thomas will play this week. But Andy Dalton being able to just, what do you say? Dink and dunk is the insulting way to say it, but I mean, we saw that. We saw, efficiency, and that's what this offense has been missing all year long, and we started to see it last week.
Mike, this feels, and I may be mischaracterizing it, but when I look at the Saints sitting at 1-3, they're home against Seattle, they're a 5.5-point favorite, and when I look at what's ahead with Cincinnati, a short week at Arizona, the Ravens, the Steelers, the Raiders, all ahead. This feels like as close to a must-win as you're going to have in Week 5. Is this one the Saints absolutely have to get on Sunday?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely fair to say that. I mean, I think it's very possible that the Saints could have another clunker this week, especially because of the injuries they have and especially because of the travel they just went through. And then they could still have a very good final 10 weeks of the season. But at some point, you're out of time. I mean,
right.
I think we've seen enough of this Saints team to say they're probably about a 500 team, maybe slightly above 500. But let's say over the final 12 weeks, they're going to be 7-5. Well, you can't start 1-4, and that math doesn't work out at a certain point. So you got to, it's just like staying ahead of the chains, I don't think there's a good enough team to be digging out of a 1-4 hole, and the schedule does get tougher. So when you have a home game against a team that has played pretty well this year, Geno Smith's playing better football than anyone expects. They just put up a ton of points last week against Detroit. But these are the ones you have to take advantage of, and they're going to regret that they didn't take advantage of the matchups against Carolina and Minnesota because those were 2 beatable teams as well.
Mike, before you go, what do they need? I mean, look, obviously I could say, look, don't turn the ball over, right? But, I mean, what are things that you're looking for on Sunday for this team to be successful and beat Seattle in the Dome?
Well, I mean, those are the big two, is is
It is that. It
win
is
the
just that
turnover
easy
battle
and
for
obvious.
the first time all year, and that comes on both sides of the ball. Instead of them turning the ball over, how about they already depend too much on this defense, but sure would be nice if they had one of those defensive touchdowns. That's what won Carolina the game when they were struggling a couple weeks ago. That can change everything. And then certainly, these drive-killing penalties, and they happen on both sides of the ball, and some of them were the ref's fault. Obviously, the Saints weren't too shy about saying that about the defensive penalties on that final drive that allowed Minnesota to get into the end zone for the touchdown when they got off the field on third down 3 times. But, you can't, if that stuff is just even, the Saints should be the better team. But, I mean, a big one for me is just the things where the Saints remind you once in a while that they're pretty good at this. Like, they've looked so inept this year on offense that, when we saw those glimpses of it on the 3 touchdown drives last week and then the 2 late field goal drives, just a reminder that they can mix the pass and run. And I think if Alvin Kamara is part of the game, everything he can do both as a runner when the offensive line is run blocking well, and we haven't seen him really get in space on those passes in the flat and things like that. So I'd like to see a healthy Alvin Kamara. If he's 100%, he might be the best player on either team on offense.
Mike, it's interesting. We haven't said a word about the Saints defense, intentionally or otherwise, but they seem okay there. They just got to figure out the other 2 phases right now.
Right. And look, unfortunately, I was saying a lot last week, I'm sure I said on your show, that I thought their biggest advantage was that Marshawn Lattimore could hold his own against Justin Jefferson. He wasn't able to do that, but 9 times out of 10, Marshawn Lattimore is going to do a good job. And I don't know if he'll shadow DK Metcalf, since Tyler Lockett is also a downfield threat, but if he's staying on one side of the ball, either way, that needs to be an advantage, obviously, for the Saints every week. And last week was a rare occasion when it wasn't.
He's on Twitter at Mike Triplett, neworleans.football, neworleans.football. That's where you can get coverage from Mike, of course, Nick Underhill, as well at neworleans.football. Mike's conversations with us every week here on AFR are brought to you now by Benny's Car Wash, bennyscarwash.com. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.